TV presents You Keep Shooting with Bryan Peterson.
So I got up bright and early this morning, and I was thrilled to discover clear skies here in the beautiful city of Chicago. And I wanted to share with you an opportunity to show you what is meant when I say in my Understanding Exposure book, I meter off brother Dusky Blue Sky. Hi, I'm Bryan Peterson, and you are watching Adorama TV. And I am the author of Understanding Exposure and Bryan Peterson's Field Guide to Understanding Photography. It is right now exactly 10 minutes until 5 o'clock in the morning. Most of you are still home sleeping or slowly waking up and pushing the coffee button. Me, I find myself out here taking photographs because that's what I love to do. The question that often comes up in a situation like this is, where do I take my meter reading from? Well, the answer is pretty simple. If all you did, which we're going to do here in this first exposure, is set the composition up, which I've done here, of Lake Michigan with the buildings in the background, namely Lakeshore Drive and John Hancock Tower being the big icon here in the foreground, and the Drake Hotel in front of that, I just aim and shoot kind of a thing where people use Aperture Priority. Well, in this case, you're going to get an exposure time of f8 of 4 seconds. So 4 seconds later, take a look at that first photograph. Now, in my mind, it's underexposed, yet the meter says it's correct. Well, the reason it's a bit under is because the bright lights of the city, which is what the meter is sensing more than anything else, are getting the bulk of the meter reading. The meter reading is not taking into account that what I call pre-dawn, or in the case of after sunset, dusky blue sky. So I would rather get an exposure for that. So look what I'm doing. I'm tilting the camera up. I'm resetting my exposure just for dusky blue sky. And at about -2/3, I'm going to set that exposure all in manual, take another shot. And instead of f8 at 4 seconds, my exposure time now is f8 at 8 seconds. And take a look at that photograph. And I think you'll agree, side by side, the better exposure is when I metered off of the pre-dawn sky. So with that in mind, where do you take your meter reading from when shooting sunrises before the sunrise or sunsets after the sunset? Here's a general guide. 30 minutes before sunrise, meter off of the sky to the west. 30 minutes after sunset, meter off the sky to the east. Now, as you may have noticed, with those two pictures side by side, the question I often get next is, what white balance do you use when shooting city scenes like this? It really doesn't matter for me, whether it's a city scene or whether it be the Rocky Mountains up at Glacier National Park. I'm almost without fail finding myself using a cloudy white balance. And people are somewhat shocked when they hear that. They go, why would you use cloudy on a clear day? Or why would you use cloudy when you have all of this incandescent mercury vapor, sodium vapor, tungsten type of lighting that the cities are often noted for? Well, again, I prefer warmer reds, oranges in terms of the overall tone of the photograph versus the much cooler, colder tones of tungsten or incandescent white balance. And just to be fair, I'm going to go ahead and switch my white balance. Take a look at this photograph. I've already switched the white balance. 8 seconds later, I want you to compare the cloudy white balance with the incandescent tungsten white balance. Clearly, the cloudy white balance, as I just mentioned, is a lot warmer than the cooler tungsten. I'm not suggesting one is better than the other, it's just a personal preference. So, white balance, it's another issue that people get a little hung up on, but in my opinion, as long as you make it a point to shoot raw images, you can always change your white balance in post-processing. If you don't like the tungsten that you get here or the cloudy that you get here, you can always switch that in post-processing. Hey, it's just one more thing you need to know. And until next time, this is Bryan Peterson saying, you keep shooting.
This episode is brought to you by Adorama TV. Visit the Adorama Learning Center where you'll find photography tips and techniques, links to the gear used in this episode, and related videos. For all the latest photography, video, and computer gear, visit Adorama.com. And the next time you're in New York City, visit our store located on 18th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue.